Okay, praise God. Praise the Lord. What do you have to say? Oh, he's with Taylor. Yeah. Okay. All right, praise the Lord. How you guys doing?
Good.
You good? All right. Okay. How are you guys following what's going on?
Yep.
Well, you following what's going on?
Which one?
So what's the new date?
Oh, the new date?
What's the new date? Everybody's excited about
the
now.
30th.
The 30th, right?
There's a new date?
There's a new date. Of course, there's a new date.
Oh,
There has to be a new date. So, and I'm feeling the same way you do. I'm like, okay, they got a new date. Let me go and look at this and prove like why. Because I'm not looking at what the answer is. I'm looking at what the answer is not, right? That was the first thing I was trying to do today as I was studying the Word and getting everything together. I was trying to find out why Yom Kippur could not be the date. Not the reason why it could be, but the reason why it could not be the date. So, quite a long study. I was in the Word probably from about 9:30 to about 3 this afternoon. And after I did all my figuring and trying to show people like why Yom Kippur could not be the date, then the Lord said, now let me show you why it could be. Why it could be the date. So I was like, okay. So let me take you through the study so that you'll see what the Lord showed me. But first things I want us to look at why everything is so perfect this year prophetically. While like some people are mad at Scotty Clark with the Revelation 12, and they're calling him names, but I think everybody, like a lot of Christians, owe the guy a lot of gratitude because him finding that sign and being bold enough to speak it in front of a lot of people that were ridiculing him, and coming back with very correct answers to give to people so that they can understand where he's coming from. So I give him a lot of credit for what he did. But then when the rapture didn't happen on Rosh Hashanah, then of course I know what we're going to do. We're going to start looking for another date. My thing is I stick with 2017. 2017 is it, okay? I don't know when 2017, but 2017 is it. Now let me show you a couple of prophecies that are incredible that produced 2017 that are way before me, okay? Way before all of these people. There is a rabbi, and his name is Rabbi Judah ben Samuel, okay? Now, Rabbi Judah, he gave his prophecies according to the Jubilees, okay? And for people who say, well, nobody really knows when the Jubilees are, blah, 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 and so you can't really tell when the 120th Jubilee is. People thought it was in 2015 and 2016, which I kept telling them it's impossible to have a Jubilee, 2015 or 2016, when you had one in 1917 and 1967. So Rabbi Judah received a prophecy from God that gave him a prophecy all the way up to the last Jubilee, and we'll go through that in a second. I have here a book called The Book of Jubilees, and I didn't read it for a long time, and then when me and Drea went to Martinique, the Lord told me to take this book with me. What this book does is, it takes you through the scriptures from Genesis to the Exodus out of Egypt, and it counts every Jubilee. Like it tells you in the first Jubilee this happened, in the second Jubilee this happened, in the third Jubilee this happened, and so it gives you every Jubilee is accounted in this ancient book, right? Now, I go by the Bible, but it was a good reference point because I wanted to see how God was counting Jubilees. There's even a message in here that the angel said that we were celebrating the Sabbath before God gave it to man. So the Sabbath, in which kind of equals out to Scripture, because God says that all the feast days belong to Him. They don't belong to Israel. He said, these are my feast days. So the Sabbath was God's in heaven before He gave it to man. So in one of the scriptures in here, it mentioned that we had Sabbath in heaven before God decided to give it to man. But let me just read this one, because when I got to the 50th Jubilee, well, to the 49th, this is what it said. It said, and in the 16th year of the 3rd week of the 49th Jubilee, thou didst depart and dwell in the land of Midian, 5 weeks and 1 year. Who departed Egypt and went to Midian?
Israel.
Moses. Remember, they accused Moses they mentioned that he had killed the Egyptian, and he said, are you going to kill me in the same way? So Moses left, and it says, in the 49th Jubilee, you left, and you went to Midian. And it says that you stayed there for this amount of time. And then it says, in the 50th Jubilee, he returned, right? And it says, and in the 50th Jubilee, and thou that thyself knowest, he spake unto you on Mount Sinai, what Prince Mistamah desired to do unto you, thou hast returning to Egypt. He did not, he said, did he not with all his power seek to slay you, talking to Moses, and deliver you and deliver the Egyptians out of thy hand when he had saw what thou had executed? And he said, the judgment and vengeance was upon the Egyptians. And he said, I delivered you out of their hands, and all the people of Israel out of their hands, out of the Egyptians, in the 50th Jubilee. So this document documents that the 50th Jubilee was the Exodus out of Egypt. Okay, and it goes through every Jubilee. So it just proves one thing, that God is counting Jubilees, and He started counting Jubilee because it also mentions in there that Adam and Eve had their first child in the first Jubilee. So it's counting from the very first Jubilee all the way to whenever he gets to 2017 or the 6,000 or the 120th Jubilee. Okay, so now Malachi, not Malachi Martin, we're talking about Rabbi Judah ben Samuel. Okay, Rabbi Judah ben Samuel died in 1217. So he died in a Jubilee year. This is how we know. Because he prophesied that the Turks were going to take over Jerusalem. And when they take over Jerusalem, they're going to hold Jerusalem in captivity for 8 Jubilees. So after 6 Jubilees, after he had died on a Jubilee year, 6 Jubilees passed, and exactly 300 years in 1517, the Turks took over Jerusalem, and they captured Jerusalem and stayed in control of Jerusalem for 8 Jubilees, for 400 more years. Then in 1917, we know that is the Belfar Corps, right?
Allen Bay.
Okay, General Allen Bay. And it says, he said, after the 8th Jubilee, the church would be destroyed out of Jerusalem and it would be taken over. So his prophecy came correct. 8 Jubilees, 400 years, 1917, they win this, Allen Bay wins this, and he promissory notes Belfar Corps, he's going to give the land back to the Jews. So his prophecies, 6 Jubilees here, 8 Jubilees here, and it all came perfect. Then he prophesied, after this, he said the land would be desolate for 1 Jubilee, like a desert wasteland. Nobody lived there for the whole 50 years. Nothing grew there, no rain there, okay? It was just a desert wasteland. But he said after that Jubilee, the Jews would take over the land once again, and they did in 1967. And then he said that after that, it will bring about the day of the Lord and the return of the Messiah.
Wow.
That was his prophecy.
That's in that book.
The whole thing is documented here. Everything that, now he wrote other books on gematria and other things in Hebrew, but this prophecy came true to the very exact date. You understand? And now we're looking at the last Jubilee as 2017, which he says will be the day of the Lord. So that's his prophecy, okay? I'm going to put his prophecy away because I want to talk about another prophecy. This prophecy was a guy named Malachi Martin. Malachi Martin prophesied 112 popes, distinctively by their order and their names. And he told, and he gave you what order they would come out of, and what their names would be, and what their characteristics would be. And Malachi Martin predicted 112 popes to the T,
yes.
And he documented it,
yes.
So that when it happens, you would know it, right?
Yep.
So he says the 111th pope would be, now watch this, you got to learn something here. The 111th pope, he said, will be the glory of the olive. Now, we know him as Benedict, okay? His real name is Joseph Ratzinger, so he's from Germany, right?
Right.
Because he was one of Hitler's kids when he was young. Now, Pope Benedict, he said he would be the glory of the olive. It says he was from the priestly order of the Olivetine, which means the olives, right? Mm-hmm. So when he said that the 111th Pope would be of the glory of the olive, he came from the Benedict, he says Benedict in the Olivetine order is to explain his motto. Benedict chose the papal of the Saint Benedict of Narcia, the founder of the Benedict order, which is the Olivetine, one branch. So he prophesied that Pope Benedict would be of the olive branch, right? Of this Olivetine sect. Then he said, now the scripture says that Pope would serve for a short time and he would be cut, and then he would be cut off. And then the last Pope that comes will go to his destruction, right? So this Pope, all of a sudden one day, we came in and they said the Pope is retiring. Yeah. It's like, when does that happen? When's the last time you heard them? They just reign forever until they just drop, right? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, this Pope, like, after 5 years goes, hey, I've had enough, I'm retiring. So he served for a short time, just as the book of Revelation said he would. Mm-hmm. Then the next Pope came, right? Mm-hmm. And he said this would be the last Pope, and he said, and he would go to his destruction because he is the one. Mm-hmm. You guys are waiting for the Antichrist, but the Antichrist has to come out of Rome because Daniel says that he will be of the people who destroyed the city and the sanctuary. Who destroyed the city and the sanctuary?
Rome.
The Romans. So this Pope has to come out of Rome. Okay, so when he became Pope, they said, oh, his name is Francis, and he's from, what, Argentina or something?
He's the first Jesuit.
Right, but he's the first Jesuit, but his name was Francis, and he was from Argentina or something. He was from a Latin country. So they say, see, the Pope wasn't right on this one. But his real name is George Mario Bergoglio. How did he get the name Francis? Because he's from the sect of the Pope of Peter Francesco, which is what he was under that sect. And his dad is from Rome. So his dad is Roman. Okay? So he's not Italian. I mean, he's not Hispanic. He's not Latino. He is a Roman. His dad is a Roman from Italy. They just moved there. And now he takes the sect under Francisco, which he gets the name Pope Francis, but it was already prophesied by Malachi Martin that Peter the Roman. Now, Francisco is Peter Francisco. Understand? So he took the line of Peter Francisco and named himself Pope Francis when his real name is George Mario Bergoglio or whatever, right? So, but he is a Roman, which the scripture says he will be a Roman. Now he's the last pope, and he says this one will go into his destruction. All right? So this prophecy became perfect. Okay? I don't want to talk about my 6,000 year count, which is perfect, so I'm just going to put this down. But how I came to 2017, counting every year from the Bible, is absolutely crazy to me. So we got Rabbi Judah ben Samuel prophesying every Jubilee, and it comes true to the exact perfect way that it's supposed to fold out. So now we know we're in the right year. That's not the problem. Everybody wants to know when. So now when it didn't happen on Rosh Hashanah, what happens? Everybody comes forth and they say, okay, now we got to find another date, okay? And it's not so much you finding another date as you going to the next possible thing that could happen that makes sense. And so let's read Leviticus chapter 25. I hope I do this as well as God did this with me, because when he finally showed me the last portion of this study, when he took over, and me trying to prove to people, you know, when he took over, I almost cried. I just went, wow. Oh my God. Okay. Now I see. Because everything he does has to be perfect.
Right.
Okay?
Leviticus what, Pastor?
Leviticus chapter 25. Okay, Rosh Hashanah passed, right?
Right.
So, and the constellation of the woman and the stars and everything, that's passed. Okay? That was a sign. It was not the sign of his coming. It wasn't the day. It was a sign of his coming. Okay? So now it says, what comes after Rosh Hashanah?
Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur. 10 days later is Yom Kippur. Okay? 10 days later is Yom Kippur. Now, here, let's go. It says, count off 7 Sabbaths of years, 7 times 7, so that the 7th Sabbath of the year amounts to a period of 49 years.
Pastor, I'm sorry,
We're in 25, verse 8. Chapter 25, verse 8. Count off 7 Sabbaths of years, 7 times 7, which equals to what? 49. So that the 7th Sabbath of the year amounts to a period of 49 years. Then have a trumpet sound everywhere on the 10th day of the 7th month, on the Day of Atonement, sound the trumpet throughout the land, consecrate the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout the land for all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Each one of you is to return to his family, and each to his own clan. The 50th year shall be a jubilee unto you. So, on the jubilee, on Yom Kippur, now the jubilee is every 50 years. The Rosh Hashanah trumpets have already blown, all 100. So what's the last trumpet that's going to blow in 2017? The jubilee trumpet. But you can only blow the jubilee trumpet in what? Jubilee. In a jubilee year. It's not every year that you're going to blow this trumpet. And so this trumpet won't be blown until the next 50 years. You understand? So the last trump was not the trumpet at Rosh Hashanah. The last trumpet was, or will be, the jubilee trumpet of Yom Kippur. The warning from the eclipse was a 40-day warning, okay? Not a 30-day warning. It was a 40-day warning. From that time to Yom Kippur is 40 days. Mm-hmm. So the warning was for 40 days, but the people, there was a 7-day wait before the flood came. As they waited inside the ark before the flood came, there was a 7-day warning. So the sign appeared on the 23rd. 7 days later is Yom Kippur and the last trumpet of 2017. Now that was enough to make everybody in the community of believers go, okay, it's just next week. We're going home. So immediately I gotta say, these people have jumped on this. I mean, thousands of views about Yom Kippur, and this is it, okay? Me, I wanted to say, let me try to save it. Because you know, if you torture data, it'll tell you what you want to hear.
Right.
You understand? Like, tell us when the rapture is. I don't know. Tell me when the rapture is. And then finally your data goes, it's next week. But you know, it's not, it may not be true, you just tortured the data, right?
Right.
So when you're trying to find it, that it's on Yom Kippur, so I'm thinking, okay, there are other days this year that there could be a rapture. Because Jesus said what? It will be as it was in the days of Noah. So the flood began when? On the 17th of Heshvan. 7 days before the 17th of Heshvan is October 30th, okay, for this year. So that's 7 days before, and it lands on a Tuesday, which is Yom Shaloshi, which is the day of weddings in Israel, is on Tuesday. So I'm thinking, oh, that could be the date, okay? So I'm like, I gotta show them that, to show them that this whole rapture could happen, but there's no trumpet on that day. You know what I'm saying? So I'm thinking, God's saying that there's gonna be a trumpet on this day, and there's no trumpet on Heshvan 17th, right? Okay, so then I said, well, what about Hanukkah? Hanukkah is December 12th through the 20th. That's 8 days, so there's no possible way you can know the day of the rapture, because it can happen on any of those days in Hanukkah. And in Revelation chapter 4, when he calls John up, the first thing he sees is a menorah lamp, right, which is a symbol of Hanukkah. And if you know anything about the feast days, from Passover to Hanukkah is 9 months if you're talking about a conception and a birth. Right. So I'm like, yeah, I got them now, Lord. I'm going to show them all these other avenues so that they can see how they could be wrong. And I think the Lord kind of said, that was a cute study. Now you want to do mine. And I was, okay, so I said to myself, let me read Leviticus, 1 Kings chapter 1, verse 32. Let's read that first. Thank you, Lord, because the Lord really put this together. And I want you to see it the way He showed me. Okay? 1 Kings chapter 1, verse 32. And I'm thinking to myself, when I show them all these other dates, then the spring dates and everything, they're not going to like me. But the Lord was like, you know, you're doing a lot, but let's do my Bible study. So, in 1 King, you there? Yes. Chapter 1, verse 32, it says, David said, call Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benoni the son of Jeroah, I can't pronounce it. And when they came before the king, he said to them, take your Lord's servant with you and set Samuel on my own mule and take him to Gihon. There have Zadok the priest of Nathan, the priest and Nathan the prophet, anoint him king over Israel. Blow the trumpet and shout, long live King Solomon. Then you are to go with him, and he is to come and sit on the throne and reign in my place. I have appointed him ruler over Israel and Judah. You see that? So they're blowing the trumpet. Is it a feast day that they're blowing the trumpet? Or are they just blowing the trumpet to announce the king? That's what I said. They're just announcing the king. It's not a feast day. And he said, and the Lord said, when do they make the coronation for kings? When is the coronation for kings for the nation of Israel? Does anybody know? Passover. Oh. Passover is the coronation day for a king if you're in the nation of Israel. Okay, so I said, well, where is this in the scripture? Because I looked it up and it gave me the history that throughout and from the different Hebrew writings, Passover is called the day of the king because that's the day that they do the coronation for a king. Okay, so I said, okay, well, show me. And then the Lord said, well, go to 1 King, chapter 6, verse 1. Because that was Solomon getting appointed as king, right?
Right.
And that trumpet blew, but it didn't just blow on any day. It blew on the day of the coronation of the king, which is Passover. Okay, 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 1. In the 480th year, after the Israelites had came out of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Zeb, the second month, he began to build the temple of the Lord. So, this is his 4th year, and it's the second month of his 4th year, and that month is Zeb. So that means the first month, if the second month was Zeb, that means the first month was what? Nisan. So that means that his coronation as a king happened in Nisan. Okay, the Lord said, let me show you one more time. Let's go to 2 Chronicles chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. See, the month of Ziv used to be, is now called Ayar. So you're in 2 Chronicles chapter 3, verse 1?
Yes.
Okay. Now it says, then King Solomon began to build the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord had appeared to his father David. It was on the threshing floor of Aranah, the Jebusite, the place provided by David. He began building on the second day of the second month in the 4th year of his reign. So, on the second day of the second month in the 4th year of his reign. So once again it's saying it was the second month of his reign. The same month, Ziv, which is Ayar. So it means the first month was Nisan, which is Passover, is the time of coronation of a king. Okay, so now the Lord leads me and says, okay, now you need to go to the book of Mark. Because in Israel, Jesus Christ is being crucified when?
Nisan.
In Nisan, on Passover. It's the 14th of Nisan. So, they know that this is the time that you make kings. This is the time that the Jews do the coronation of the kings. So, in Matthew chapter 15, verse 16.
Mark.
Amen.
It says, the soldiers led Jesus away into the place that is called the Praetorium. Okay? And called together the whole company of soldiers. So I have to look up what is the Praetorium.
Where they crown him?
That is the place where they bring the kings in and they crown them. So Jesus Christ, they're going to give Jesus Christ, since he says he's king of the Jews, and it's Nisan, the month of coronation of a king, they're going to give him a crowning ceremony, a mocking crowning ceremony. So, it says, so they put a purple robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns, and set it on him. And they began to call out to him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Again and again they struck him on the head with a staff and spit on him. Falling on their knees, they paid homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. So this is what happens on the day of coronation of a king. And the Jews know that this is the day we're supposed to make kings. And the Romans know, and they say, let's mock the whole day. Let's bring him in and give him a mock day. Let's put thorns on his head instead of a crown and push them down into his skull until he bleeds. And then let's take turns punching him in the face. And then let's get on our knees and bow down and go, "Oh, mighty king," you know, and joke about it, right? Okay. So, go to John chapter 19. Gospel of John chapter 19. Boy, I'm telling you, Jesus did a lot for us. It's incredible. Considering the fact that he is the angel, you know what I mean? He is the angel of the Lord in the Old Testament,
Right.
who killed 185,000 soldiers by himself overnight, right?
Right.
So it's not like he has to take this beating or take them spitting on him. He's doing this for what reason? For us. What does Psalm chapter 22? He said, for those who have not yet been born, that he did this, okay? So he's doing this for us. But let's look at this again. It says in John 19, then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. And the soldiers twisted together crowns of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him in the face. Once more, Pilate came out and said to the Jews, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for charge against him." Now, this is the 14th of Nisan, right? On the 10th of Nisan, they take the land, right? For 4 days, they examine the land, right? Why are they examining the land?
Make sure there's no flaws.
To make sure there's no flaws in the land, because you can't present to God an animal with flaws. So that for 4 days they examined them and they asked Jesus many questions. Now on the 4th day, Pilate comes out and declares what?
Perfect.
He's perfect, he's innocent. Now to them, they're trying to say, no, kill him. We don't want him. But when Pilate announced to these people that there was no fault in this lamb, that made him eligible to die.
Yeah.
That means he's innocent, he's pure, he's clean, he's perfect. And to them, they're saying, crucify him, we don't care if he hasn't sinned. But Pilate has now announced that he is a lamb worthy of death. Okay? Now, it says, look, I'm bringing them out. Okay, it says, when Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify, crucify." But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him." But the Jews insisted, "We have a law, and according to the law, he must die, because he claimed to be the Son of God." So, here we are, Jesus Christ dying on the cross and being mocked in a crowning ceremony on the day of coronation of a king of the Jews. And so what Pilate put on above him was King of the Jews, right? And then, I know it better in Hebrew than I know in English, that's crazy. And then, over his head is announced who he is, and they say change it. You're right, don't put king of the Jews. Say, right, he said he's king of the Jews. And Pilate says, no, I'm going to leave it the same. But it's the day of coronation of a king. Okay. Now, going back to Tishri. This month, the 10th of Tishri is this coming Shabbat, okay? Going back to that. People said, you know, the 30th is the last trumpet of 2017. It's going to be on that day. And so someone said, hey, if Matthew says, if it's on a day that you do not expect. So if we expect that day, it can't be on that day. And I said, it does not say that. It does not say if it's on a day. So I said, go to the scripture, okay? So I went to Matthew chapter what? 24, verse 44. And this is what it reads. It says, so you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect. It doesn't say he will come on a day that you do not expect.
Right.
It says he's coming on an hour that you do not expect. Okay? If you go to Luke chapter 12, verse 40, it says it once again. Because I'm going to come at an hour that you do not expect, not a day that you do not expect. Now, when you go to, when it says nobody knows the day or the hour, it doesn't use the word or. It says you do not know the day and the hour. So the Greek is giving you the precise language, and the interpretation is giving you a language that confuses you because you don't know the day or the hour. That means you don't know either one. But the Greek says you don't know the day and the hour. And it says I'm coming on an hour that you do not expect. Okay? So, if you want to say the day and it's the day, you have not violated any scripture. But you don't know the hour because it's coming at an hour that you do not expect. Okay? So they're all expecting this week. Now this is it. Now this is it. Look, we have to go to Kings. First King, let's see, wait a minute. Samuel, I'm sorry. Samuel. 2 Samuel chapter 2. Now you got to learn something. Because they're prophesying a Yom Kippur rapture. Okay? And they're saying we know that this has to be, it's the last trumpet of 2017. There's not going to be another Jubilee trumpet for 50 more years. This has to be it. So watch this. Here we go. You there? 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 8.
Amen.
Now watch this. It says, meanwhile, Abner and Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim. And he made him king over Gilead, Asheri, Jezreel, and also over Ephraim, Benjamin, and all of Israel. Ishbosheth. You know what Ishbosheth means? Ish is a man. Boaz means a defiled man. So they made this defiled man the king over Israel. But God had already said that who was going to be king? David.
Right.
So that means the person that God has proclaimed is going to be king can't take rulership over it because why? There's a defiled person that's already ruling over what God has already told him he's going to rule. Does that sound like the Antichrist?
Yes.
All right? And Christ cannot rule. So this is what it says. Let's continue. Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel and reigned 2 years. The house of Judah, however, followed David. the length of time of David, it was king in Hebron over the house of Judah, was 7 years and 6 months. So David can't be king over all of Israel, so he goes and he becomes king over in Hebron for 7 years and 6 months. What's the history of Hebron? Hebron belongs to who?
Oh, the Gentiles.
Hebron belongs to Caleb. God promised that land to Caleb. Caleb is a Gentile. So Judah means what? Praise. So he's rulership over the Gentiles in the house of praise for 7 years and 6 months until what? He's got to go back and destroy the man of sin, Ishbosheth, before he can take over what God has given him and take over all of Israel. Now you got a part of it, but you can't have the rest till you destroy and cut off the head of Ishbosheth. Okay?
Wow.
Now, let's go back. Let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 5. 7 years and 6 months.
Chapter 5,
Chapter 5, we're going to start at verse 1. Okay, now before this, in verse 12, it says David gave order to them because they had killed, his men had killed Ishbosheth, right? So Ishbosheth is done, and when they killed him, they cut his head off, okay? So David didn't like the way they killed him, so he had the men killed, and then they buried the head of Ishbosheth. But Ishbosheth had his head cut off. Now that Ishbosheth was destroyed, David can now rule over what God has given him, right? So it says in verse 5, all of the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, we are your own flesh and blood. Will the Jews say that to Jesus?
Yes, they will.
We are your own flesh and blood. In the past, while Saul was king over us, you were the one that led Israel on their military campaigns. Did Jesus lead them on the military campaigns or not?
Yep.
Yes, they will proclaim that Jesus, you are the one who has fought our military campaign. And the Lord said to you, you will be shepherd. You will shepherd my people Israel, and you will be their ruler. When all the elders of Israel had come to King David at Hebron, the king made a compact with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel, finally. And David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 40 years. In Hebron, he reigned over Judah for 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem, he reigned over all of Israel and Judah for 33 years. So now he's ruling the way God announced that he would rule, but he couldn't do it until he destroyed the evil man and cut off the head of the serpent, which is Satan. This is just the story of Jesus. But God is telling you that Jesus is going to reign for 7 years and 6 months. Okay? So now, let's look at this. If you have a rapture here, okay, and the tribulations last 7 years, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to Nisan for the coronation day of a king. 6 months. So the 6 months when Jesus gets crowned by all of Israel will be 7 years and 6 months. But we've got to be gone 6 months before. You understand? We've got to be gone 6 months because he's going to rule for 7 years and 6 months. We know the tribulation is going to last 7 years, but what about the 6 months? If you leave in Tishri, it'll be exactly 6 months before Nisan, where the 7 years begin. So this is when I'm sitting there going, the Lord says, isn't my Bible study better than yours? And I said, yeah. He said, just wait. Because all of the prophecies are perfect. And this is just one of them that had to be perfect because Jesus has to reign for 7 years and 6 months in Hebron, over the Gentiles, over the house of praise, for 6 months. Now, if you go to the book of Esther, the king gave a party for 6 months, 180 days. And he toured the people around all of his wealth and showed them everything in his kingdom. And it says that at the end of the sixth day, okay, then he had a, listen, the scriptures is telling you this 6 months is important. Tishri, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, tribulation begins. Now you got 7 years, he comes back exactly on the day in the month of Tishri, but you got the 6 months to cover. So that's what God wanted to show me.
Wow.
After I showed him my little Bible study.
Wow.
This Yom Kippur, last trumpet on Yom Kippur is perfect. And it's perfect scripture-wise. Last of the trumpets of 2017. Praise God.
And which one of those months are we in now, Pastor Sam?
We're in Tishri right here.
Tishri right now.
We're waiting for the 10th of Tishri. Everybody's saying on the 10th of Tishri it's going to happen. And you got 6 months till the day of crowning. Okay? So that would cover that 6 months and then 7 years.
Wow.
And what happens if it doesn't happen? For the people watching.
Then torture the data some more. I don't know. My thing is, I'm always going with 2017, right?
Right.
2017 is the year. That's what God gave me in 2003, 2007. But I'm saying, if you're going to do it perfect, it would have to be on tissue. It would have to be. So let's see. Praise God.
Amen.
Amen.
Good.